You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. We interview innovators in this space every week, and usually it's Shawn introducing our guest. And this is why you're hearing me, Ivan Zach, saying hello first, because Shawn is going to introduce our guest today.
That's right. Super excited to get started today. Our guest is none other than our co-host, Ivan Zach. We're going to talk about Galaxy Vet's annual burnout study. Ivan's a recovering ER vet that has recently got back into practice. Also, the CEO of Galaxy Vets has had all kinds of experience in this wonderful industry. And we're back talking about the annual burnout study that Galaxy does every year. So, Ivan, go ahead and kick us off. What's this burnout study all about? Why are you still doing it? And kind of introduce it to our listeners.
I like the title of Recovering ER Vet. I am on undercover mission doing some shifts again and just researching the local market. The study it's about the burnout. The way we decided to continue, and this is the third year in a row we've done it, and usually we measure first how burned out the sample, so the sample of people that we survey, and then we kind of slice this population based on things that we want to find out about. And so this year we surveyed close to 2,000 people, and the goal was to develop systematic solutions that can help to combat burnout. The 3 points that we focused on, aside from just measuring the burnout, was the compensation model and how people prefer to be compensated and how is that related to burnout. Then we wanted to talk about the work arrangements and how people like to work and what settings, and also the impact of euthanasia, especially economics. So those are the 3 areas of focus.
That's really amazing. So, what were some of the key findings in each one of these areas?
So a couple sort of basic findings, like overall as a group. What was interesting is that we're actually back to the pre-pandemic level of burnout. It doesn't mean that we're better. It just means we are screwed the same as we were before pandemic. So there's definitely a burnout, and but pandemics seem to have extra effect on it, which is now it's back to as we were before. The interesting is that CSRs had the lowest professional fulfillment out of all the professionals in the hospital, and also that the most burnout group this year, which it hasn't been in the previous years, are actually hospital managers, which is interesting. I can see that. But the 3 areas that we focused on, one was interesting about euthanasia. So I was debating my entire career. I remember at some point, I think it was about 6 years, right about when I burned out. I was just trying to think how many pets did I murder? And basically, and I use that word because we're the only profession that can kill your client if it's not going well. And I think that really has effect on your mental status. But interestingly, so yeah, in that 5 years, I just counted back all my shifts and sort of averaged it out. So that was close to 2,700 pets that I've euthanized. And I was always thinking that there's no way it doesn't leave a mark on your well-being. But what it turns out that euthanasia itself is actually not a factor in the level of burnout. So just euthanasia itself is actually considered as a part of the day-to-day work, and it's not as stressful and doesn't add burnout. But what we found out is that actually economic euthanasia specifically, and that was my very strong suspicion, that when you have to euthanize a pet because of inability of the client to pay for services, is really having a strong effect. I think that this is a huge moral dilemma and the conflict of values, which is one of the triggers of burnout, because we're trained to treat our patients and to save our patients. But when we can't do that, I think that creates a lot of stress and adds to burnout.
It's really interesting because I was thinking of, this new legislation, assisted suicide in Canada, in the medical space. And I was wondering if there was any kind of correlation, but it's interesting that you bring up this idea of economic euthanasia being a trigger, but the other part being part of the job. I guess when it makes sense, when it's quality of life, it makes sense that a veterinarian would see that as part of their job. But when there's a preventable case in front of them, that creating that conflict totally is reasonable.
Well, and I love the use of words quality of life, but they're commonly used in the situation where people can't pay, and they're talking about quality of life, but essentially I've seen all kinds. It's like, people are moving. I had one, I think I told you before in one of the episodes. There's this lady, she came in, she had a newborn, and she was devastated because she has a Rottweiler at home, and the Rottweiler was acting funny around the newborn. So she was just paranoid that something will happen. So she brought in the dog and she ended up putting it down because she was just so afraid. And then a couple hours later, the real owner came in. It was her ex-husband, and there was nothing wrong with the dog. She just brought in the dog as a revenge, killed her husband's dog.
Oh my God, that is awful.
Yep, that's what happens. So, but anyway,
I also want to highlight that, like the fact that there's been movement in a direction that's better is really bright news, like it's the problem's still not gone away, but even the fact that there's a downward trend in the right direction, that's a great thing for the profession. Hopefully it can keep going down.
so interestingly, this topic, a lot of people are saying, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to just provide free services? And it's not about that. It's about being creative of how do you extend the payment plans. And, every time all the people are saying preventative care, but it is truly one of the ways. And if you are convincing to your pet owners is that doing dental when it's grade one compared to dental when it's completely effed up and you have to pull a bunch of teeth for like $3,000. Yeah, and then if it's expensive to do a dental for whatever it is, $700, then do a payment plan. Then just say, hey, this is a 6 payment, 7 payment thing, and then we'll do it now, but when we'll prevent a horrendous dental disease in the future. And then so there are creative ways around it. Also using non-for-profit. That's another thing. And I loved our conversation with Amy Saint Arnaud about the vet billing, and then also an interesting thing that's been circling sort of in my head is that it's usually not the full amount that people can't pay. It's like, okay, this costs today $3,000, but I'm like, look, if I'll cancel my vacation and do this, I have like $1,800. So they're missing not the full amount. So then if you're using the non-for-profit arm of a potential hospital or partner with someone, then you just need to cover that little bit or do the scratch pay for or care credit for the small amount. It's not for the full amount. So being creative around it, there is a way. And then another model that right now we're exploring in Galaxy, and its model out there is also the subscription or concierge model, where you have continuous care, where you can access veterinarian more frequently, more often, and then not think about the fact that every time I have to pay a consult fee when it's covered by your membership. So that's sort of another thing that you can do.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ivan. And the thing I guess that's encouraging for me is, like you said, the burnout level has gone down to kind of pre-pandemic level. And I'd like to think all of the conversations that we've had on our show that have been happening in the industry, the awareness of kind of mental health and people's struggles. I'd like to think that all of these things that have been happening in the industry are having a positive effect, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next year's study to see if there is a continued decline, even if it's a slight decline year over year. I think that's a great thing, and I think that all the hard work that people are doing in the industry needs to keep up.
Well, it's I tend to be a little bit more pragmatic about it in our industry, because if you'll see what's happening in the industry, especially with the economic crisis, all the corporates now squeeze everything they can out of the organizations, and you hear it all over the place how they're cutting costs and pushing the vets to work harder. So I will be not surprised if it's going to get worse in a year because of what's going on right now. So let me be this, a little bit pessimistic guy, but the things that we talk about and the reason why we do this study is because then we say, okay, what do you do about it? How do you decrease the economic euthanasia? Or how do you provide the alternative places of work? And that's the second bit that I wanted to kind of segue into that is the options of how do you work. So we surveyed all the professionals, and then we asked them, would you like to work remotely? Essentially, would you like to operate in the telemedicine environment? And the interesting thing is that so the vets, the techs, and the managers was the biggest sample, obviously, because that's the so the and none of them wanted to work 100% from home. It's not that they want to work 100% from home, but a third of the veterinarians would like to work from home. 38% of technicians would like to work from home, and then the practice managers, 61. And I think that for practice managers that are the most burnout, it makes complete sense. There's some things that, HR and one-on-ones and stuff like that that you need to do in the hospital, but all the accounting, all the like inventory, if you're controlling it and someone else is doing the cycle counts and stuff, you don't have to do it in the hospital. So why the hell not to allow them to work from home, not to have distraction every 2 minutes, someone popping in the office with their, and putting another monkey on their back? Why not to allow that? And then what pandemic didn't teach the veterinary industry is how to work through telemedicine. And other than Modern Animal, Bond Vet, and Small Door, and now Galaxy, there's very little true adoption of telehealth. I mean, teletriage is starting, but there's not enough. And if people are saying that they want to work remotely, let's set up this environment.
Yeah, so fascinating. So let me just ask a clarification question. This is, would you like to work from home full time, or would you like to have a portion of your job that is home based?
So all of them wanted to have portion of their job. So the choice of, let's say, so doctors were, I would like 70% be in the hospital, but then a third of it, could I do telehealth shifts? And that's what we're trying to do. At Galaxy is, I love ER, but I can't do more than a shift a week. Like, this is it. I love it, but it's bad for me. And then GP, maybe I can handle 2 a week and then 2 more from home. How awesome is that? So that's what people are asking for.
It's so fascinating. So, we recently set up this new division at Talk To called Verify by Talk To, and we've been hiring, dozens of veterinary technicians to help us with medical records and verification and a bunch of other things. And a bunch of the people that have come to work for us, they've said exactly this. They're all technicians. All of them have like 5 years plus experience. And they said, I want this job, but I want to be able to work 1 or 2 days in the clinic that I'm currently at still. Would you allow that? So we've got a bunch of fractional people that still are in the clinic. So it's kind of proving out exactly what the study says, is that people do want to have these blended roles, even if it means having 2 employers.
Well, if you think about it, think about who is going into our profession, who is going into, vet medicine, technicians and doctors. They want to see pets. It's not developers. They don't want to sit in front of the computer all day long. But we're so fed up with, intensity. And again, with the economic crisis right now and how the corporates are pushing everybody, this is making things worse. So if you can do a blended environment, or as I usually call it, augmented brick and mortar by telehealth, and then you don't even have to have separate people. It's just that what I think we had a mental blank spot during pandemic. Nobody realized that to put a workflow of telehealth into the hospital, it has to be not those people that are in the hospital now. The whole industry was like, oh, we've put, AnyPan, whatever, AirVat, or whatever the telehealth platform. And it's like, okay, now what do you do? So the client now has this app. You somehow need to deliver it to them. And then people that are in the clinic, they have 30 appointments booked. They don't understand, where's that time to pick up now with the phone as well? Are you kidding me? So the thing needs to happen is that maybe it's the same doctors, but 2 days a week they're from home, they're set up on their computer, and they're doing telehealth appointments depending on your VCPR and your state. And then if you need blood work and x-ray, send them to the hospital, come back, and then you can complete the whole cycle doing that. But then you're expanding beyond the walls of your hospital, you're adding more capacity, and then you're processing more patients without creating bottlenecks in the hospital. Like, this is the way to go.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I really hope that we don't lose all of the momentum and learning opportunities that came out of the pandemic, because it really feels like everybody kind of wants to go back to the way it was and throw out these new models. And it's very apparent with this study and the results that there's a clear desire that people want a change in the way that they work. And it would be a damn shame if that just goes away. But let's keep moving. We're running a little bit low on time. So what surprised you the most about the study this year? And actually, while we're at it, what surprised you the least?
Well, the most surprising was the compensation model. So I've been a big proponent of salaries, and that's my personal attitude. When someone is looking me in the eyes and says that, you're just in it for money, and I know that I'm paid an hour, that's my biggest sort of, moral support to say, look, whether you're here or not, I'm paid the same. So I'm here to treat your pet. And if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. And but that's how I practice. But we did this study because I had this hypothesis that everybody wants to be on salary. So the interesting thing is that in human models, in human healthcare model, it is proven that compensation based on commission is actually contributing to burnout. There's studies about it. It's been proven. So we wanted to run the same thing. And it's interesting that it shows that it's not direct correlation, but essentially the way we depicted it is that people that have more certainty about their future retirement and things like that are less burned out. And then the correlation is that people that are on commission, they feel like they have more control of their retirement in the future. So therefore, those that are on commission technically are less burned out. So it's a bit of an inference there. It's not a direct correlation, but it was surprising to me because it seems like commission is not as bad. It's not because people prefer that for compensation reasons. Another thing, we do only one slice of it, burnout, and then how it contributes, how the commission-based pay contributes to burnout. So it seems like it's not. It doesn't mean that it's favored for the industry. It doesn't mean that it's better. I'm just saying that people that have more certainty in the future, and those people that are on commission seem to feel like they have more certainty about the future, they're less burned out.
So would it be fair to say that you were wrong?
I'm never wrong, that. I have a T-shirt that says I might be. What is it? My wife gave it to me. I might be wrong, but it's highly unlikely.
Yeah,
that's what it says.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's great. Thanks for teeing that up for me. That was lovely. So I guess, as we round out to the end here, what are any other things that you'd like to share with the audience? I guess one question that comes to mind is the study available if people want to take a look at it? And if so, how do they get it?
Totally. Yeah. Go on galaxyvets.com. There's a /burnout study. Why do people say that? /this/that? Nobody will ever type it in. Anyway, go on Galaxy Vets website. On the bottom, on the footer, you can find it. And there's media links on the top, and you'll find it pretty easily. There's the whole white paper. You can download it. It's not huge. It's well written. There's pictures if you like pictures. But there's good graphs, and it shows how we slice the data. So that's really what you want to look at. You don't want to read the whole study. And yeah, so just go on the Learning Center under Galaxy Vets and have a look.
Well, that's awesome. I guess that takes us to our 20 minutes. It's hard to believe that we're doing this episode 3 years in a row now. So thanks for doing the study. Thanks for sharing the info. And I guess that's all. Have a great day.
Yeah, man. Thanks for letting me to talk about it for the third time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.